would like to now welcome to the stage Victoria Cross for the Robert Phillips Regional Diversity Award.
Thank you, Leslie. Hello, my name is Victoria Cross with Multnomah County, and I'm award chair for this conference. It's always a pleasure to serve on the Robert Phillips Award Committee for as long as I have. It is truly a labor of love. We get to learn about the incredible and inspiring work that our colleagues are doing within our organizations and in the community. It's a joy to recognize this work. Each year, the Northwest Public Employees Diversity Conference solicits nominations from our sponsoring jurisdictions to honor an employee, work group, a team, or even department that has demonstrated a sustained commitment to diversity that goes beyond their day-to-day job requirements. This award, named after the conference's founder, Robert Phillips. I'm always thankful because Robert was my mentor. The award embraces the spirit by which Mr. Phillips poured out so much for the cause of creating a more inclusive, diverse, and equitable workplace and region. To all of those who wrote a nomination this year, we thank you. Thank you. We thank you for recognizing the contribution of your colleagues. And the nominees, we thank you for your contributions and outstanding work you have accomplished this year and previous years. We would like to honor you now by reading your names. Please hold your applause until the end. Alexis Alberti with Multnomah County. Saniva Bennett with Multnomah County. Multnomah County of Human Services, Aging, Disability, and Veterans Services Division, Community Services Program. Multnomah County's Library Capital Bond Program. Zinka Soderberg with Multnomah County. Jamila Thompson with DEQ. Larry Turner with Multnomah County. Isabel Virel Stewart with Multnomah County. Please join me to celebrate these people and just honor them. Now it is my pleasure to introduce County Conference co-chair Percy Winters Jr., who will be presenting the award to this year's honoree. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give Victoria another round of applause, please. She did great. Kenny Chin's ancestral home is Fujian, China. He was born in Taiwan and immigrated to the United States in 2004. Kenny works at Multnomah County Holgate Library, promoting Chinese culture and serving the community. The Chinese in his heart represent thousands of years of historical background and cultural inheritance, a culture with proprietary, justice, integrity, many cultural traits, and a foundation of kindness, perseverance, positivity, and diligence. Kenny is well connected to the community, and their interest is his interest. He enjoys bringing awareness of multiculturalism and creating programs that bring communication and understanding between communities. He hopes that we all become cultural bridges, integrate cultures, create foundations of understanding and mutual trust for the community, and work together to create the eternal peace we call home. Please join me in welcoming our 2024 award winner, Kenny Chin with Multnomah County. Thank you. Here you go right here, and there he is right there.
Thank you, Percy and Victoria, for your marvelous introduction. You did a wonderful job. You don't screw up. It's all AI. How is everyone doing? Oh, we just have our lunch, so move around if you need some air or oxygen for yourself. Don't fall into sleep. My speech is really short, like 2-3 minutes. My name is Kenny Chen, and I work at Holgate Library as a bilingual Chinese LA, library assistant. It's my highest honor to stand here and receive this award. First, I would like to thank someone, my wife, Fiona, and my son, Ethan. He is sick, so I recommend staying home. Don't get everyone flu or anything. You two are my best cheerleader, and the reason I give in my best to the community. We support each other, no matter good day or bad days. Let me borrow your hands and thank them. Thanks you too, and love you. Second, I would like to thank all my colleagues and managers at Multnomah County and Multnomah County Library. Please, if you are here from Multnomah County, raise your hands. We overcome tons of challenge through pandemic and rebuilding closure, right? And with all the background, all the hard work in the background, we make it through. The frontline staff cannot serve our community properly without your support. So let me borrow your hands again. Let's give them a big hand. And how do you like my dress today? You know what? We are going to have the first Hanfu fashion show at Holgate Library on November 19. And you are all invited. Please visit our beautiful, wonderful, well-built new Holgate Library and enjoy a Hanfu fashion show with us if you are available. The last, I would like to thank everyone here. And some people are not able to make it here. They are at their workstation. Let's never forget our original intention. Keep serving our community with creativity, integrity, and dignity. I want to recognize all the nominated party or person. I know your name was bring up earlier. Please stand up if you are here. Let's cheers. Bring your cup. Let's cheer for everyone who got nominated. Cheers. Thank you for serving your community. I won, we all won. And next time, I will sit with you and cheer for next winner. Thank you so much.
During the keynote, please refrain from taking pictures and video from personal devices. It is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Hanif Fazal. Hanif Fazal brings an extensive track record spanning 2 decades in guiding equity and inclusion processes within corporate, governmental, philanthropic, and nonprofit sectors. In his capacity as co-founder and managing partner of the Center for Equity and Inclusion, represented down front here, Hanif has been instrumental in driving transformative change. He has led organizations nationwide in the integration of diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and principles into their organizational values, culture, and operational frameworks. During his career, Hanif has skillfully designed and delivered many high-impact, equity-based programs and processes tailored to enhance the professional acumen of leaders. It's AI. As a trusted advisor to C-suite and senior executives, he adeptly navigates the intricate balance between optimizing business interests and cultivating a robust, inclusive organizational culture. Known for his compelling authenticity and deep knowledge of diversity, equity, and inclusion, Hanif has been a sought-after keynote speaker, trainer, and facilitator. His inaugural publication, An Other World, stands as a testament to his unwavering commitment to advancing discourse on crucial social matters. Hanif is a National Pew Civic Change Award winner, Multnomah County Hilltop Award winner, and he was awarded the Taste of Portland's Changemaker Award for his prolonged impact on equity and inclusion throughout the city of Portland. Most recently, Hanif's first book, An Other World, was awarded the Silver Medal at the IPPA Benjamin Franklin Book Awards. Please join me in welcoming Hanif Fazal.
How y'all doing? Hey, there we go. All right, all right. Maybe a quarter of y'all. Let's try. How y'all doing? There we go. All right. Tough crowd. Here we go. It's great to be here with you all. I had a really nice session with executive leaders just this morning, and it just reminded me of, in some ways, the possibility that exists in all this work. Certainly, it's motivating to be in the space with people who are so committed to this thing called equity and inclusion and just in general, a more just world. And so I just appreciate folks' willingness to spend this little bit of time with me. I hope you've had a good conference so far, and I'm hoping we can engage in a really good conversation together this afternoon. So a little bit about me. I have had the honor of working across our community for over 30 years, which makes me feel really old. For nearly 20 of those years, I worked with underserved communities and communities of color, primarily in the education world and social work world. And about a decade ago, in response to what I was feeling and experiencing was seeing just entrenched disparities continue to widen despite our best direct service efforts. I, along with an amazing woman named Froini Quiros, decided to start up the Center for Equity and Inclusion. So for over a decade now, the center, I can move this here, there we go. The center has been working to advance equity and inclusion in a meaningful and transformative manner with organizations both locally and nationally, from government to nonprofit, from nonprofit to corporate, from corporate to education and foundations, and name the organization. CI has found a way, I think, to partner over the last 10 years in that kind of sector. As a principal consultant for CEI over the last 10 years, I've had the good fortune to work with executive leaders and teams, DEI directors, managers and supervisors, communities of color, educators, just name the group that is coming together to try to figure out how to advance this work. And I've been, again, fortunate enough to consult and train, strategize, and ultimately establish relationships with individuals and teams who are all committed to advancing equity and inclusion, and yet all in different places on their equity journey. It's been through these relationships that there have been, on my end, honestly, no shortage of mistakes made, lesson learned, and oftentimes just failure, both big and sometimes in small ways. But there's also been real successes, key learnings, and in certain moments, real authentic transformation. I feel like through all of this, I've been able to gain a unique understanding of DEI and race equity, or kind of whatever we're calling it these days, its work, its shortcoming, its potential, and with all of it, kind of where we find ourselves today. I will also say, aside from the professional, there is for me the personal. And that's both my personal experience as a poor brown kid with Indian and Mexican heritage, growing up with a name like me in a predominantly white suburbs of Tigard and Beaverton, which had a profound experience on my understanding of race and identity, and certainly shapes my experience and understanding of the importance and need for race equity. And certainly my experience as a father of color to my beautiful daughter, Amina, makes this conversation even more personal at an even deeper level for me. And so does the stories of people of color that have been shared with me in intimate moments and exchanges, from students and families to educators to leaders to professionals all along their professional journey. People of color, all of who were deeply committed to their personal uplift and advancement, and just as committed to their community's uplift and advancement. And yet we're struggling to do so in the face of a legacy of institutionalized systems and culture that was just overtly designed for their oppression. So it's this blend of both personal and professional experience that I'm hoping to center today in our conversation that I think is as pivotal as it gets. A conversation about DEI and whether it's on its deathbed or not, or its potential is there for us. And I want to name that we're having this conversation at maybe, for me at least, the most pivotal moment in our generation. So, is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, on its deathbed? I mean, are we watching right in front of us DEI die? You know, the number of times I've been asked now, I'm in space, all kinds of spaces of like, hey, Hanif, is it possible that we just maybe don't call it DEI? Could we just call it like effective teaming? Or, we've dropped the E, we're gonna just do diversity and inclusion. Or, we're just not gonna do DEI, we're just gonna do belonging. Or, name it on and on. I've seen just people saying to me, like people who are like all for DEI, Hanif, listen, I love this work, I wanna do this work. If I even say DEI, this conversation is dead on arrival. I was thinking, I knew we were in a little bit of trouble. I'm 52, and if anybody's read my book, they'll know a little bit of how pivotal basketball is to me. And so I'm 52 years old, but I kind of think I'm 32 on the basketball court. And so I have, a weekly basketball game that I have with fellow people who are 52 think they're 32. And there's this white dude who plays, and he's one of these white guys that, is like really down with DEI and loves race equity and is kind of like in all the advocacy stuff. Like he came to, I didn't really even know him, but he showed up at basketball one day. He's like, yo man, I looked you up. I see what you do. And I'm so down and all this kind of stuff. And And one day, we're warming up, shooting hoops, and he comes up to me, he's like, yo, you okay, man? Like, CI still okay? Is it working? Man, this stuff on DEI, people are like kicking back on this, man. It's not cool. And I'm like, man, when I am on a basketball court and we are talking about DEI and deathbeds and this and that, I know we are in all kinds of trouble here. So it's something to explore. Is DEI really dying right in front of us? Or is its potential within our grasp? Is its potential within our grasp? I want to see if we can engage in a conversation a bit about this kind of heading. And underneath that, I'm wanting to explore really three things today. I want to be able to just acknowledge or begin to break down why there is so much resistance to DEI, and not just resistance to DEI from the far right or from, anti-DEI movement, but why are people of color more and more getting disenchanted, more and more exhausted by DEI efforts? And even liberal white folks questioning, what is it and why is it we're doing this? Is this actually working? So why is the resistance? Be able to acknowledge that, and at the same time, begin to maybe anchor us or remind us all a little bit about why DEI and about the impact or the purpose of DEI. And finally, I'm hoping that we can leave today being really grounded in an understanding of exactly why DEI is mission critical. How we actually can't do or live into what we're charged to do unless we are centered or grounded in a deep-seated commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So to engage us in this exploration, I want to use the voices of people both nationally and then locally that I've engaged with to help us kind of ground in the conversation and explore this conversation kind of from all fronts. It's DEI, so we must engage multiple perspectives, right? And so let's do that. Let's start with three different people who hold very different platforms and that experience the world very differently. But all three share one thing in common. They are not down with DEI, okay? So take a look at these quotes. The first one is, people who do DEI work, our hero, Elon Musk, right? And the second is actually a white CEO that I was coaching. And deep into our kind of coaching experience, a very liberal white CEO, he made this comment to me, which sat with me for a long time. And the third came from one DEI leader, but I have heard way too much, too often, this quote over and over and over again. So I want to begin to explore this as kind of a foundation and then begin to build off what does it look like to do things differently. So, when I think about Elon, I think about there may be no human being that is more quintessential, plays a more typical role of someone who exists on the far right or represents the anti-DEI movement than Elon Musk. The right has been unbelievably effective in rewriting and controlling the narrative of what DEI is. You hear it in our presidential debates with Kamala. You hear it across the board, I'm sure, in all your bureaus and the systems you operate in. They've really captured and been able to rewrite this narrative of what it is. They've also been incredibly strategic in how they've used this narrative to put people who hold the same sentiments into political positions across the board, right? From school boards to presidential nominees, they've been absolutely strategic in making sure that in positions of power, people who are holding on to and are deeply committed to anti-DEI efforts are in position and ready to operate on that position. They also, in terms of strategy, have been effective in using this narrative as the backbone of litigation against major corporations who are committing to DEI efforts. From Coca-Cola to Target, any organization who's daring to engage in DEI efforts are risking finding themselves in a courtroom. And of course, at a government level, you all must be well aware of the local and state politics that are enforcing anti-DEI platforms. I was just in Park City about 4 or 5 months ago, and had an opportunity with some of our staff to engage the kind of a citywide initiative to engage in some race equity work. And at the end of the session, it was like a 3-day kind of process. At the end of the session, somebody came up to me, and they were like, Hanif, thank you so much for this. I really appreciated all the stuff. And I really wanted to come to your session, but between us, I had to change the name of your session when I was applying for professional development funds to attend. And I was like, oh, really? Why? And they were like, because the state has mandated and created legislation that states that any entity that is receiving state dollars cannot use those dollars on anything connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or certainly not anything that's in the title. So I just changed the title. And I thought, boy, does this capture it, right? Like the way in which we have codified racism into legislation and policy and law. And it also gets at the creativity, the resistance, the way people have again and again and again found ways to kind of work around that, all in that moment. Yet while the right and anti-DEI movement and all that stuff may be the most aggressive in their anti-DEI efforts, I think it's important to name the roadblocks to us realizing the potential of DEI also comes from the left in sometimes very different fashion, right? So when I look at a quote from a CEO, when I'm sitting in a room from a CEO who says, does anyone really do this work without a gun pointed to their head? When the CEO said this to me, I was well aware of the both overt and implicit racism inherent in that statement, the violence and kind of the interesting choice of metaphor. And at the same time, I can at least appreciate the willingness of a CEO to state what I know so many other white leaders are thinking about DEI. Again and again and again, I'm sensing that below the surface with many white leaders are feelings of being pushed into this work or backed into a corner out of fear of being called out. Questions about the effectiveness of DEI. And I certainly know this, I've heard this again and again from white leaders, a growing wariness with what they experience as constant call-outs around inaction or lack of commitment or distrust of their leadership and their leadership teams. Well, again, from their perspective, they feel as if they're doing so much to move the dial, and positive progress goes completely unnoticed and unacknowledged. Now, given the two quotes from Elon and from the CEO, and everything I've just talked about, is anybody surprised at how we get to the last quote? Right? When I said this in our leadership team meeting this morning, when I go to organizations, it is almost always kind of almost a true situation for me that almost every time the most unhappy, frustrated people in an organization are the people who are leading DEI efforts. Accountable for the effective implementation of equity and inclusion, while at the same time given no power to hold stakeholders accountable. Too often, DEI leaders and their teams are under-resourced, not given the kind of time needed for DEI work to really transform the workspace, and are charged with changing the hearts and minds of a workforce that in many parts is wed to the status quo. Too often, I've worked with DEI teams and leaders who are under constant attack for just doing what they're charged to do. This work under these types of conditions is absolutely exhausting. So look, this is just a picture of, just a small picture actually, of what we're up against. And we could go on and give different examples of that. But I think we know. So with all of that in mind, let's just reset for a minute and begin to think about what the response is or how we begin to address what this resistance could look like and maybe begin to think about what it means to actualize the potential of DEI. One of the best ways to do that is by just re-anchoring into some core foundational beliefs of what DEI is all about. When we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, it's grounded in a set of beliefs and values that really, I think, sometimes we lose track of. So just for time's sake, I want to just touch on 3. First, there's a belief when it comes to DEI and a value, that there's a belief in the value of a workforce that is healthy in nature, right? A recognition that a healthy and productive workforce is in part a manifestation of a work environment where people with diverse backgrounds feel a sense of belonging, feel encouraged to express their perspectives, and when needed, are able to address barriers to success that may exist due to their identity. An empowering work culture is good for business at every level. There's a second belief that I think is important for us to just begin to think about and then we'll build off of, which is a belief in the value of multiple perspectives, a recognition that diverse perspectives help us innovate, problem solve in a way that a homogeneous culture could never do. Diverse perspectives also help us reach and connect with and serve traditionally marginalized communities, which we are charged to serve. And finally, a belief that equity is mission critical, a recognition that doing business or serving communities in a way that perpetuates historic and persistent disparities by unintentionally creating policies and practices that are exploitive, underserving, or exclusive is not only out of value, but again, just bad business. Why alienate massive swaths of customer bases, stakeholders, or community members that we're charged to serve? It doesn't make sense. So look, we know these beliefs. We have a sense of, most of it in this room have a sense of that, yet why is it so easy or so difficult to get people on board with it? Why does it feel, in spite of all of this, that DI really is on its deathbed? Like we're watching it kind of slip away, one way or the other, under-resourcing it, dismantling DEI completely from departments or from city governments. And what is within our agency to change? How do we regain momentum? What we can't control is anti-DEI organization and resourcing and strategy. But what we can control is our level of commitment and our ability to evolve the work. What we can control is our ability to strategize and our ability to organize in the name of advancing DEI. So I want to just, as we kind of slowly get to the second half of this, begin to suggest just 4 places for us to begin to reflect on where do we start with this, right? And again, it's not just the only 4, it's just something to begin to get us thinking about in the more affirmative. Like, what does it actually take to begin to re-engage, re-motivate, and begin to really re-energize the DEI movement? The first and foremost, I think that is just so important, is that I think it's important for DEI professionals, DEI leads, people driving this work, to take stock and acknowledge what hasn't worked about DEI and get committed to evolving our practice. The plethora of DEI consultants that have emerged over the last 10 years has led to inconsistent practice at best. We have to acknowledge that DEI in its current form is still in its infancy. I often think about DEI, and I almost think about it like I think about tech. You know, when I think about tech, I think there's like a level of possibility that lives with technology. It's all, you know, certainly technology fails us time and time and time and time again. But every time it fails, we don't just abandon it. We just don't throw it away. We don't just say, oh, it's not good. We actually like say, oh, we are still motivated somehow with technology to continue to resource it, to continue to see the possibility in it. It just lives in this sense of possibility, right? It's almost like we have to have technology. So like, how do we make it better and better and better? right? And it is a result of this resourcing. It's the result of this commitment to staying engaged with tech that we see tech take massive strides. The things we can do in communication and data collection, I mean, you name it, AI, all this stuff, right? Like, we could only do that if there was a commitment to its advancement, an ongoing resourcing, and a true value of it. And I think about that when I think about equity and inclusion. What would it mean to think about DEI in the same way we think about tech? Live in the possibility of DEI. And every time it doesn't work, we don't just throw it away or say it doesn't work or I'm not going to engage anymore or under-resource it. But instead, we double down on our resource in it. We commit to its growth because we understand, just like tech can enhance the way we operate and live with one another, that DEI absolutely is the whole design, the whole idea of design is to help us live in a more just way with one another. Why not think of it that way and live in the possibility? So there's something about that. So for me, when I think about this, I think what's needed more now than ever is a level of accountability for our work, but not the kind of accountability that is built around shame and consequence and punishment. The kind of accountability that is designed to be empowering and challenges us to learn and do better the next time. We must hold ourselves accountable in that manner around our DEI training, our practices, and our strategies. As part of that accountability, we must create space, and I feel like this is a priority one, for BIPOC staff to reflect on what they need in terms of DEI participation. Organizations must be receptive to what comes out of that reflection. Too often, as I mentioned earlier, our DI leaders and staff of color are our most unhappy and burnt out people in organizations. And it makes sense when you sit back and reflect. Our staff of color are burnt out in these processes because of our approaches to this that often required them to be educators of white people, required that they sit in trainings as white people worked out their racial stuck points, or worse, dug in their heels, unwilling to engage or see things differently. When it comes to internal DEI initiatives, there must be a shift from the way in which DEI training approaches have been unbendingly committed to centering white learning, unbendingly committed to the comfort of white people in that learning process, and assumed in that process that there is no work for people of color. There's no learning for us to be gained. So effective DEI work requires all of us to shift our DEI focus from just centering white learning to creating space in that center, to a shared center, to maybe even more centered, the idea of what do people of color need to thrive in our workspaces. I mean, just imagine having that be the central question. Not what do white people need to get on board, but what do people of color need to thrive? I mean, at the end, people of color thriving, if we experience that, that would be an equitable outcome. It's what we're searching for, right? And I get the connection between white power holders and white people and the role that they play in that. I just think it can't be the central and only question that we're in pursuit of. We can't circle all of our D efforts around white people. In many ways, we just perpetuate the very thing we're trying to dismantle, which is culture centered in whiteness. And it can't just be, again, that even. I think in the DI world have gotten caught up in just consciousness-raising conversations, and I think we have to evolve our practice to get to action quicker. We have to find some kind of middle ground. I know at the center, we're doing our best to ensure that all of our work is more quickly applicable, and that there are concrete tools and approaches to integrate into work culture, operations, and services. Consciousness-raising conversations are still critical to this work. We just have to find a way to shift those conversations more quickly and into new ways of working with one another, new ways of relating to one another, and certainly new ways of providing services to the communities that we are charged to serve. And finally, I'll just say this, and I think this may be for me the most important thing. I think we have to find a way to engage in this work that is actually energizing, that is coalition building, that leaves room, believe it or not, for joy. Yeah, here we go. A sense of belonging, right? A sense of hope and a sense of possibility. We were talking about this with our leaders, that yes, it is actually possible to sprinkle joy into these conversations. It actually might be, believe it or not, essential to do that. Look, the anti-right DI movement, I mean, they are so incredibly motivated, so energized, so inspired. I mean, have you seen, when you look at these like rallies and stuff, I mean, these people are energized. I mean, they're waving their flags, they're screaming and yelling, they're like angry, they're celebrating. I mean, they are energized, right? Like it looks like a college football game at some of these rallies. I'm like, what is Team Anti-DI is in effect, right? Like, this may sound too wild for some of us, but for me, in spaces with people of color for sure, we must see joy as part of this process. If this work is exhausting us to the point of wanting to be done with it, we're doing something wrong. This work must challenge us. It's gonna be hard work. No one wants to back away from hard work. But at the same time, this work has to uplift us. This work can and should be life-giving, not life-draining. We have got to find a way to come together around this work, around all that we're learning from this work, around all that is changing because of this work, and learn to stand in solidarity with and for this work. We must be insistent that this work doesn't go away because of its failings, but rather grows and becomes stronger because of it. Insist that DEI is not on its deathbed, but rather we are committed to stepping into its possibility. This, I believe so much, is within our grasp. The possibility of DEI is within our grasp. And again, let's not forget what DEI at the end of the day is all about. I just have to tell you that this is the first time I really felt seen in my organization. And I've come to realize I need to commit to voicing my perspective and ideas and stop questioning my own credibility. This is a quote that came from a staff member in an organization we worked with. It comes from a woman of color. And far too often in the spaces I'm in, I hear from women of color at every level of our organization's hierarchy talk about the challenge of establishing and maintaining credibility. The challenge and the fight and the struggle to constantly get standing in the spaces that they're in, whether that's their executive teams, their management teams, or even just a staff meeting. It's possible for us to create something different. One of the things that I love the most about equity work is that it requires us to use our imagination. Imagine that something could be different. Imagine that it could be different than it was before. And I love how great equity work pushes us to transform what we imagine into reality. And when that happens, like when this happens, really magical things are experienced. There's a magic in racial justice. I mean, let's be clear about what DEI is. DEI is racial justice work, right? It's just racial justice work that is getting at the heart of, in many ways, white supremacy, which is capitalism. It's getting in those workspaces, and it's not always talking about the big reforms. It's talking about the subtle ways that inequities show up in our workspace and addressing them. The subtle ways that our work cultures have excluded or marginalized our Black, brown, and indigenous staff members. It talks about the way in which our practices have been intentionally and oftentimes unintentionally exploitive of the very people that we're trying to serve. It's racial justice. And there's magic when we can create that. Even if it's just in a one-on-one relationship, even if in my relationship with you, somehow you feel seen in a way that you weren't seen before. And we build a relationship where that's not just a kind of aberration, but it's actual norm. Every time we're together, you feel seen. Every time together, you feel like there's something magical because it doesn't exist in so many places for us. There's just something really special about the possibility of DEI when we commit to actualizing it. And all of this reminds me of why I'm personally so motivated to do this work. This is my daughter, Amina Luz Ariela Fazel. Her name means trustworthy light, line of God, given intentionally. She is in many ways my purpose in this work, and certainly my compass when it comes to my own integrity. Here's what I know about this young, now soon to be 12-year-old that thinks she's 18. And I think she's still like 3, like my little baby. I keep trying to tell her, Mina, you're always gonna be my baby no matter what. Here's what I know about this young woman. I know that there's a lot that I don't know about her, but there are certain things I'm certain of. And one thing that I'm certain of is that Amina is going to grow up into a woman who has a voice. I'm certain of this. I'm positive of this. I know that she is going to grow up as a young woman and into a woman that not only has a voice, but is deeply seated in a commitment to her and her own community, being able to honor that voice. Their voice, in many ways, she's going to be committed to a sense of justice for her community. She's tied to her community in a way that, in so many ways, I wasn't growing up. And so I'm positive of this, that she's going to grow up to be this young woman with big voice, committed to making a difference, smart enough to do it, willing to work hard enough to make it happen. And, not long ago, I was doing an interview with this podcast, and they asked me a question, what do you want for Amina? And this is such a constant for me that it was an easy question for me in the moment to answer. But for some reason, that particular question stayed with me. And I just started thinking about it a lot. About like, hey, what do I want for Amina when it comes to her own hopes and aspirations? What do I want for Amina when it comes to her sense of cultural connection? What do I want for Amina when it comes to how she lives and operates with our own family? What do I want from Mina? All these different places. And I also started to think, what do I want from Mina when she gets older and she's sitting in workspaces that you all would be managing? What would I want for Amina, for you, in the workspaces you all hold? Would she thrive or would she be surviving in your space? And what I want for Amina, if you were the managers of her workspace, is simple. I want to make sure that Amina has a place in that space. I want to make sure that her voice has standing and where she isn't in a constant struggle for credibility. I want her potential to be actualized. Her identity is experienced as a contribution, not an obstacle. I want Amina to be working in your department, in your system, and be part of the solution rather than the problem when it comes to race and persistent social and economic disparities. And I want her workspace to bring her a sense of purpose and joy, for her to feel proud of the hard work she contributed to, and where she experiences a real sense of belonging. I wholeheartedly believe that this kind of work and this kind of workspace and this kind of world is the possibility that DEI holds. I also wholeheartedly believe that for us in this room, the leaders in this room, in this conversation for now, that we're talking about right now, what I'm talking about with you is legacy work. It's a chance to do what those before us did. It's a chance to stay the course the way those before us stayed the course. It's a chance to be uncompromisingly insistent that this work continues and evolves the way those before us were insistent and uncompromising. This is the possibility before us, and our ability to step into it for Amina and for all of our children will be the legacy that we leave behind for them. Again, this is our legacy work I'm talking about. And I can think of no better work at no more important time and no better legacy to leave behind than the work that's in front of us right now. Thank you. In solidarity. Appreciate and love y'all.